Dimp Digital presents Idle Game Chat.
Cool.
Hello, apps here from Dimp Digital. Welcome to Idle Game Chat bonus stage. This is our occasional bonus show where we produce our infamous SpoilerCast and other discussions not fit for the main show. This time we're going full spoilers on Kena Bridge of Spirits. I think that's the right pronunciation, but I'm sure we'll get into that as we get through the game. And we've got a very, very special guest joining us this week for this. I'm joined all the way from the US of A by our favourite Pixel Pints co-host and former producer at Sifted Media. It's my man, Mitch Sikorsky. Mitch, how you doing?
Oh, I'm great. I mean, I don't know if McWalm's gonna like you said that I'm your favorite at Pixel Pints.
You're my personal favourite, so there you go. That's out there now in the law. McWomble's
I'll take it. I'll take it.
McWomble's got a lot of work to do to reach the higher standards of Mitch. So you're
I don't even know what I did.
Well, I'm sure maybe we'll get into that later on. But yes, it's good to have you walk through the forbidden door. You're the first person from the Pixel Pints crew to come over this way and say hello. So a very warm welcome from myself. How you feeling about being here? Obviously, it's similar setup. You're used to these kind of gigs, but different kind of structure.
No different. I just get to hang out with you more, which is fun.
Yes.
So I get to enter your domain. I don't get the one to be the hosting and doing all the questioning, and I just get to sit here and chat, and I like that.
No, good. That's exactly it. So, as I mentioned at the top of the show, this is I don't know if we're going to go completely balls deep into spoilers and whatnot of Kena, but the warning's out there. We're going to be talking about, a lot of the game with no restrictions
Not like there's
on
balls deep spoilers anyway.
No, this isn't like The Last of Us Part 2 level of, narrative-driven game that kind of hinges on that. But we will talk about everything and anything that we decide is relevant. So that could involve some spoilers. So if you've not played it, bugger off or don't complain if we do spoil something. So when I talk to people about video games and we kind of go to deep diving into them, what I usually start with is something I call cards on the table, which basically means put your cards on the table in terms of your history with this, developer or the franchise, or perhaps the genre. A bit difficult with Kena because this is coming out of a studio that, as far as I know, Ember Labs had not created a video game. This is their first go at it.
Yeah, no, it's their first game. I think they've made production in regards to CG animated short films. But no, this is their first game. So there's not really cards on the table to have. Maybe the genre. I mean, but I think it's a very generic genre in regards to, like, there's so many games in that genre. So, like, to say that someone doesn't have cards on the table for that probably would be lying to themselves a little bit if they haven't, like, delved deep into it.
No.
But I'm a fan of, like, the Sly Cooper franchise, Mario, like all the mixes, and it's all about, like, what the game offers as its flavor, because it's always like a mixture. It's like, do you do more platforming? Do you do more combat? Do you do more puzzle solving? It's like, really, that's what makes the game, and the genre really is just too expansive to really say, like, man, that's exactly what it is.
No, we're not talking about a simulation or a strategy game here. This is chances are you've played a game like this before at some point during your gaming career if you're listening or watching. So what did you play it on, actually? Because it is PlayStation and PC. I played it on the PS5, but was you on the PS4 or did you play it on the PC?
No, I played it on my PC, but
Nice.
also my roommate has a PS5, and so I got to see some of him playing it on the PS5. So I kind of got a little bit of a comparison, which PC version is pretty close to the quality you're getting out of the PS5. I mean, my setup is relatively new. I built that just last year for the first time, and the graphics card is pretty close to what you get for the PS5. So, like, quality wise, I was still getting good quality and good frame rate and everything. So I don't think I lost anything out of the experience. And I didn't do the research though to find out if because the difference between the PS4 and the PS5 version is the little critters. I forgot what they're
Ah,
called.
a rot.
The rot, that's what it is. So that more rot appear on screen and follow you
Right.
around on the
Okay.
PS5 version than the PS4 because the SSD can load more in and be able to run them at the same time. I think they were the same when I was looking at it on my PS on the PlayStation 5 my roommate was playing and my PC. I do have an SSD on my PC, so I think that helps. But um, if not, I couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah, it's interesting that usually when we talk about a PC versus a console version, you'll reference what the scale backs have been made on the console version, but given the early stage of the PS5, they do have some parity with some of the games that aren't overly intensive and pushing like huge graphical meltdowns in the GPUs or the CPUs. So this is one of those games that I think you can enjoy on any of the platforms available on. To be honest, I don't think you're
Yeah, I
gonna.
think even on PS4 it would still look great. Like
Yeah,
it's still worth playing.
yeah, because it's much more about the art style, isn't it, than you know
Yeah, and that
resolution
art
and
style can definitely cover up, like, it's similar to like Mario for the Switch. It may
yes,
look good, and that, but it's that art style can easily. There's not. It's purposely doesn't have detail. Like it's
yes,
very just primary colors and lines. That's all it is.
yes,
There's not really like, oh, the crevices on the hat are like moving
yeah,
based off the way the wind blows. No, it's like that's kind of the style, which is it's always going to be having the one little crevice on the hat because that's always going to be there no matter what.
yeah. I absolutely agree with that. We might as well start talking about the presentation of the game and how it looks. And you've touched on some good kind of items there because I found just the look and the style and the overall kind of atmosphere that was brooding out of the game to be really charming. Um,
Oh yeah.
Not often do I play games that just feel this nice to be lost in, and I was lost in it for plenty of hours going around the map and doing the puzzle solving and the optional bits and pieces. I know it's a bit of a lazy comparison, but it was a bit of a throwback to an old school Zelda before they kind of went open world with Breath of the Wild. Everything had this lovely charm to it, and the music as well. I think is a key component of that, and art style, which you touched on, was great as well. These games in particular don't typically always catch people's eye because they're not gritty and realistic, but I'm of the opinion that I like having these games throughout the year to dive into and get lost into because it can get a bit bleak with all the realistic
Oh yeah.
shooters and whatnot. What's your overall thoughts of the style of this game? Because I felt like you could see their animation and prowess shining through just in the gameplay and in the way the game looked and the cutscenes obviously as well.
Yeah, and I think that was the one thing. That's probably one of my small complaints about the game is like I don't think they needed the CG cutscenes.
No, yeah, that was
even
quite
though even even though like it's like yeah they're an animation studio and that's probably like the thing for them, it's like, oh, we want to show that off, which like clearly like it's
yes,
shown off very well. Like I can clearly tell this is like an animated studio that has done this before because the critters like they captured the adorableness of them, they
yes,
captured the fun, the playfulness, the sadness. They were able to capture all that. I don't. Maybe the question was maybe they couldn't capture it in engine that the engine they were using and based off the tool set they had and it was their first game and they're like maybe it's just easier to do a CG cutscene. Because that was the one thing where I was like, okay, there is a drastic difference right now between the CG cutscene right now and the in-game
yeah,
running the graphics. Even though it's still beautiful regardless, it's just is a very drastic difference. And it's almost it did remind me of older games and
yeah,
in a sense. But I mean, for what we got out of the quality, I think it was like, okay, I'm a little more forgiving of it for that aspect. But I think presentation wise, it did great. I think I agree with you with, it kept the lightheartedness, even though in some of the darkest of moments, you're almost like, I don't feel as if it's like depressing me in this dark moment right now because
no,
the overall atmosphere was so cheery. It was
yeah.
more of a concern to make sure the character's okay and like having that emotional, grip with the character. I think that was probably one of the strongest things is this game's presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the cutscenes you mentioned was actually quite jarring on the PS5. I don't know what frames per second you played it on, but it's 60 FPS. I think there was a performance mode that I switched it on as soon as I got into the game on the PS5, and the cutscenes were running at 30. So there's always that jarringness. When you cut to it, you're like, oh, okay, my eyes are not kind of used to this. And I always found that slightly distracting throughout. I'm assuming there's a similar setup on the PC side of things in that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They were running through that as well. But you're right. The story itself. If you wrote it down, you think that's actually quite depressing. There's these people that have died and they're stuck, or not happy about passing over until whatever the other world is, and Keener as a spirit guide is there to usher them along and finish some unresolved business. But there's some deep stories in there, and some when the main thing is when you find out what happened to the characters, how they met their demise. Some of the relationships they had, they're not very cheery, and it's kind of at odds with the with the look, the feel. I was not always prepared for that, but I felt like it meshed quite well.
Yeah, I think a moment that really captured me for the game really was the first kind of like overall, like it's broken up in like, what's it, 4?
Yeah.
4 parts, basically 4 different like missions you're doing, or sorry, 4. I'd say 4 different like main missions you're doing for certain people for the spirits. And I think the first one really did a good job without like being all gamey and being like, let me tell you about this, and like, oh, you completed the mission, and like, oh, like trying to like over explain to the player. I think it showed off their work they've done before too in this aspect, is when you find out the kids are dead.
Yes, yeah.
And I think that was so, I like, because at first I was like confused when they said we can't go with you. And like at the first time, I think that's the perfect mission to be the first mission.
Yes.
I think if they did that later, I would have been like, oh, the kids are dead. So it's like,
absolutely.
It would have made died. But I love that for a moment it captured me to go, what do you mean you can't come with me? You're right here. Like you're right here with it. And then they go walk to their brother, and then it's like, oh,
they're all gone. Yeah,
they're dead. They're all gone. Like I was thinking, oh, maybe there's some survivors, and you kind of have that hope and like that. And then I think that's really, really clever that I don't think games do enough of, to be honest. No, especially when they're doing story-driven games.
No, I totally agree. Like, 'cause I think the brother's name's Taro, and you're off to find him. And at that point, I was like, he's probably dead. This sounds like
everyone else. I was like, you're probably dead.
Yeah.
So like, I don't that you don't have to play on that, and I don't think they do. I think they just continue on.
Yep.
And I think the nuance of it is that like they didn't have to tell her they're dead.
No.
So then when she goes meets everyone else, they don't have to go, I'm dead, by the way. It's like you already just inferred. You're like, you're dead.
Yes.
Which is like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because actually, when you first meet the two kids, they pop by and say hello. They're in a cutscene and they're chatting back and forth, and then they kind of just like wander off, and they actually disappear on the screen. And I was like, oh, that's a bit sloppy. Like they clearly aren't going to be companions throughout the game. Not realizing at the time that it's all in context, because they are, they're spirits technically at this point. They're not living beings. And I remember thinking that when the bombshell dropped, that they were gone as well. All 3 of them had tragically died in this in this horrible incident. I was like, that's clever, because the seed was planted there, and my silly brain picked up on the kind of the sign, but didn't put 2 and 2 together and just assumed the game was being a bit gamey, like they do with companions and whatnot.
Right,
they disappear, smoke and mirrors, etc., etc. So that was definitely a bit of an eye opener. I think like that to me felt like the strongest story of the 4, the strongest kind of mission was that particular one. I found the next few not quite as impactful. Maybe that's because your eyes are open at that point as to what's probably occurring here. But I generally found that to be my favourite of the kind of passing of over of spirits that were available.
Well, the second one. So here's my like. I agree 100%. I think the first one was most impactful, and then the second one for me I found confusing, and then the third one is kind of a little generic. And so like, but it wasn't as like it was bad. It was just I was curious on like I knew the answer. It's how do we get to the answer
Yeah.
is what I was more interested about. And then once I got there, I was like, oh, okay, solves what I was thinking about. Because the second one was utterly confusing to me because it's like the her lover was with her, and then she went away. But is she dead? I don't like
Oh yeah,
but I think she
I think
is.
they all are. Yeah, I don't think she
But like
came.
how? But how did like, is she dead because she like went off somewhere and then she died over there, or did she was she while she was going off the explosion happened and it killed her? Like I think that was the thing that was most bugging me. I was like, how did she die? Like,
Yeah,
I knew the first one and how you die, but I don't know about you. I don't know how your lover died, and that bugs me. That's the one thing that like oh it's like oh but I was like, oh, the creature was really cool. That the like the companion creature of the Toro. I was like,
yes,
I call him a Tauros. Jesus, I'm going Pokemon. Um, the bull, with the wood horns. I mean, with the rock horns. I think that was so cool. I
yeah,
found that interesting. Um, but I will say, I do. That was probably one of my favorite boss battles, though. Even though it was my the most I think confusing. Could have used a rewrite there somewhere. Um, I think that was the most interesting and most fun boss fight though because it involved so many different things at once. Um,
yeah.
with
That's
the shooting of the arrow to like hit the bell and then destroy the bell, which is its power source, and then that was just all good.
yeah,
I loved the boss battles and how they all kind of had a different flavor. They weren't all the same. It wasn't just use your combat and beat the living crap out of this thing, which is part of what some of the things you have to do in this game.
yeah,
But I really liked the bosses and how they had their own each unique type of way to take out the boss, and it didn't have to telegraph it to me. Like it didn't have to write a message and say
no,
or her to say, "Oh, I should really hit that." But it's like really great language, visual language for the game to be able to tell me exactly what I need to do without feeling frustrated. And the frustration is more of execution
yep,
than it is of figuring out what the heck I need to do. Whereas like when I play Metroid Dread, for an example, for me, it's like I have to live long enough to figure out the pattern to beat the boss,
yes,
not necessarily the game is telling me, oh, you need to do this, and that's how you implement it. Where it's
yeah.
yeah, I could get a thing about the final boss in Metroid Dread is probably the most frustrating boss I've ever faced in quite some time. Because the other part is I don't know if I'm getting any damage on the boss because there's no
There's no
health
health
bar.
bar. No,
So,
yeah,
which doesn't help me to know if I'm damaging it to make it implement the moves. But anyways, that's a different game for another day. But I think this game executed that part really well, which makes it easier on the gamer and makes like I like a game that makes it difficult for me because I can't execute, then make it difficult because I don't understand what you want me to do.
yes.
That's where my frustration comes into play. But I love they did a great job overall with the bosses with that aspect.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that completely caught me off guard was the obviously, well, yeah, the difficulty of the game, because it's kind of at odds with this jolly, beautiful, puzzle-solving, light-hearted, gentle experience of going through the world. You know, oh, I'll figure that out. I'll sling up there, bow that, bang bang. Oh, this is really nice. And then you get to the bosses, and they are hard bastards. It pulls no punches. It requires you to be able to execute the specific moves and work through the different phases of the boss. And it completely caught me off guard. And there were times when I was getting frustrated, like we all do, because I couldn't execute, much like you. But I was just really surprised that was the case because it was kind of at odds with the tone of the game. And usually, you expect these games to be a bit of a walk in the park, don't you? You go through it. You don't really think about the combat or anything like that. It's a means to the end to get the narrative up and running and all that good stuff. But I was completely caught off guard by that. I don't know if you was as well in terms of its
There was one
difficulty.
boss battle that did make me frustrated, and I don't know if it was a lack of execution on my part. It took me quite a while, and I thought it was the final boss too. And I was
Was
like,
it Toshi, that the guy in the ice cave?
yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes, same here.
That was the one boss battle I did have a frustration with. And it was all
Absolutely.
about execution too. Like it reminded me of a Souls game. Where it's like it's the aspect of where you as the player I got too aggressive sometimes where I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm windowing them. I'm gonna get that extra hit in, and it's
Yeah.
like, no, that's not how it works. You
No.
need to be very patient.
Yes.
Excuse me, and the process of it too is like his health's not going down a lot. Like so it's you got to be patient with everything, and just make sure you like know exactly how to tackle each of his counter moves, because they're all unique and different. And I think they still telegraphed really well how to do it. It's just sometimes you're in the wrong position to like shoot it, and so you can't get it, or you miss, and then he executes his move, and it
Yeah.
becomes difficult. So I think, yeah, I agree wholeheartedly, especially near the end. It was once I hit that boss battle, and then it was the final boss, which I think was easier than that
I
one.
agree. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
Overall, the ice cave one is the hardest one of them
So,
all.
yeah.
So if people play it and haven't played it before and are going to play it, and they
Mm.
go, Jesus Christ, is this going to get harder? No, it does not get
No,
harder.
that's like the peak,
It,
and it kind of drops down. Not by much. I still found the last bit quite challenging with the different arena battles it'll put you through, and
yeah, and because you're also lacking your
that's it.
rot, and then you
Absolutely.
don't have the, which I think the game did a great job, and this is something I do want to really commend it for, which is, a lot of games sometimes where you're like, especially something like this game, um, with the combat that's not, it's not as complex. But it's not basic either. I think
No.
they add enough nuances to the combat to make it fresh every single time, and add new enemies to make it fresh every single time. Um, but what it does is, because of how the difficulty was earlier in the game, I could just basically button mash my way
Yeah.
through.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening was I went to it. I found a challenge area where they're like, kill this many enemies in like this amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I couldn't beat it. And I was like,
No.
why can't I beat this? And and so I ended up, I like looked in the menus. I was like, am I not using any like special moves that I have? And here I have a list of all these special moves I've never used. And all of a sudden I started to use them, and then I completed the task. And then I used the special moves throughout the rest of the game, which helped
Yeah.
dramatically.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a good way of a game to go. If someone is not using your tools that you're providing for them, offer them the opportunities where they have to use them,
Yeah.
so that they know that they're available to them, because people forget, like, a lot of times, especially if something's working. You got your bread and butter, and your what I'm using this phrase a lot lately, Shang-Chi, it's stay in the pocket.
Yeah.
You're in that pocket, you're really doing well with what's there, and you're not being challenged to try new things, or challenged to try all the things that are available to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the one where it made me do that, and then all of a sudden things got better for me, because I
Yeah.
was starting to use them in regular combat throughout the rest of the game. And I don't think I would have beat the game if especially with that boss battle in the ice cave, if I didn't have those tools and knew those tools were available to me. And I still haven't used some of them that are there, because it's just not my cup of tea. I rather use the rot one where I'm smashing the staff down, and it'll
Yeah.
shoot the rod at them, instead of using the arrow version. Like, it's,
Yep.
you find your bread and butter what you like, but I'm happy the game found a way to force me to use them and remind me, oh, I do have these. I
Yeah.
should use them.
Yes, yeah. It's interesting because when the game first released, I was kind of playing it and I saw a few people's impressions, and I was like, yeah, it's really, it's charming, blah blah blah. But it's really basic. It doesn't have much depth to it. And I was like, yeah. And in the early going, I was like, yeah, okay, they are right, because I'm just sort of going through this world, blah blah blah. But it's almost like an onion, this game. Like it takes I felt like it took a bit of time to get there. But once you're kind of through and at the end of that first kind of story with the brothers, the three brothers, like by then a lot of the onion peel has come away. But I really, in hindsight, appreciated that it took its time to do that and didn't just chuck you straight in with all the combat moves, of all the different puzzle solving moves you can do with the bow and all that good stuff. The bomb you don't get till quite late on as well. It really was, they were tempered in giving you these tools and slowly introducing them, so you could get to grips with the new stuff you were getting to, and then introduce another element that you can use. And if we've introduced it, there's a good chance you're going to need to use it for the next phase of the game to get through it. And I really appreciated that. I was really pleased that it just always felt like I was discovering something new and doing something new, and it's completely off base with like the first 2-3 hours of the game that I'd played, because I felt like it was going to be a bit of run of the mill, but it certainly gameplay wise has a lot more depth than what people were giving it credit for. A lot of people may have given their impression that they've not played it again, so they're never going to find out that it does get far more advanced than what you'd expect.
Yeah, it gives you the impression that they never beat the game.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely does.
Which is kind of just disheartening, because it's like, that's not a basic game. Is like a game that wouldn't grow upon itself. Like the skill tree on that game is for the amount of time you play, which is like, I think got done in 12 hours.
Yeah.
Which is 1/3 of what you could play on like, or yeah, 1/3 of like your average video game in regards to like non-indie title. And so, the skill tree on it's probably the third of the size of another game. So I'm like,
what do you want?
What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
Do you want 80 different skills condensed into 12 hours of gameplay? No, like it's got to be stretched out.
Yeah, and I think what the game was going for was more of, similar of the regards to like the enemies themselves are like puzzles.
Yeah.
And it's more of like how you strategically go through each enemy, or which one to attack first using which tool, is more of the combat's bread and butter than is I give you a million tools and just beat the living crap out of something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it really showed that because of how unique the bosses were, especially in the mini bosses, that they each kind of have their own flavor in regards to the way you take them down, whether it's a bomb to reveal something to be able to shoot with the arrow then, or a bomb to reveal something to then hit it with your bow staff. That then they would introduce that as a regular enemy, sometimes lower powered than what you faced off as the mini boss, and sometimes almost just as powerful.
Yeah.
But then it makes you feel as the player that you've actually grown, and that you evolved, and that you're better and you're stronger and all that kind of aspect. So I just do not get this is the one game where I'm like, reviewers, you got that way wrong. And I did. It reminds me of Days Gone in that aspect of like, wow, the reviewers just, I don't know what you were thinking.
No, I agree. It certainly has a lot more than what I felt like people gave it credit for. Like I can't marry up. Even just how challenging the combat is. If you just stripped away everything else, that's far in excess of most of the games that you'd class as simplistic. Like it's just not on that level. You cannot cruise through this game. You will not cruise through it with your eyes closed. It's not the way it's designed.
I mean, it's even got that, and then it also has an additional like extra combat ability where like you can third person control another creature to take out a bunch of other creatures. Like, how's that basic? That's not basic at all.
No.
It makes, I think we're both in agreement on that portion.
Yeah, absolutely. I felt like the only criticism I might have in terms of the combat side of things, and this came to light in a few of the bosses, but we talk about Toshi and the ice cave, it came to a head there, is that sometimes I felt like didn't feel like it quite had the tightness that I felt like I needed as a player sometimes, particularly with things like the parry mechanic. I just could not, for the life of me, nail down the timing for the parrying. I don't know what it was. It could be me, but I suspect others will have struggled with that as well.
Not just you. It was
not
me
just
too.
Me.
I could not get the parry down. It reminded me of Zelda Breath of the Wild's parry mechanic, where I just couldn't get that down either. Which I do not understand when people go, it's easy. I was like, what are you talking about, bro? Like, you can see me play games. I play a lot of games, and I play them I'm replaying Jedi Fallen Order just because I was like bored. It's in the US of A and LA. It is Thanksgiving, so we have the time off, and I was just like, I kind of want to just go back and play something for a little bit. So I grabbed some Jedi Fallen Order. And I'm like, I got that parry down. Like, I don't know, but I can do a Dark Souls parry. I don't know what else you ask. I agree though. I think in a sense it is. I don't know if it's too tight. In regards to the movement of the character in combat is difficult, especially off lock on. But even on lock on, it is still a little It's just missing maybe a little more work, just a little bit. Like it's not just you're just not there yet. You're almost there.
Yeah.
It's like almost standing up, like for a child. Like you're almost there. You just need to like like put that other leg there.
Yeah, it just felt like it overreached slightly in some areas. It's not consistently like that, but
No,
there's moments.
it's mainly in the boss battles when
Yeah.
you really need
When you're under
to be
pressure and
on
you
your
need to,
toes.
and like you were
Yeah.
talking about earlier about executing, sometimes I felt like, and I love to make excuses for my own, shortfallings and downcomings when it comes to games, but I felt like sometimes the game wasn't always meeting me halfway. I was getting,
Yeah, I think the lock on contribute to that too, especially for that boss battle in the ice cave was especially when an enemy disappears or all of a sudden gets behind you, it somehow doesn't follow the camera like it should. It should swing around and follow the character with you,
Yeah.
but it's like it's in this cone, and if it doesn't make it in the cone, it loses the lock on, which then becomes frustrating because then you're trying to re-lock on,
yeah,
but they might be doing something at the same
they,
time, which then you
yeah,
don't have time to then dodge, and then you get hit. And
that's it.
there's like
They're
all that kind
signaling
of
some
stuff.
attack that you could have dodged if you'd seen it
Yes,
happen, but by the time you've
exactly.
got eyes on it, they're halfway through that, and you're like, well, I'm gonna get hit here. And there's
Right.
no other thing about
No,
it. It was stingy on the hills, wasn't it? I felt like in the boss battles, you'd get like two little flowers or tears to heal on with the rot, and that was it. I thought they would regenerate after a certain period of time, but I
Yep.
felt like in most cases, it didn't matter how long I tried to just survive, I was not getting any more health, and I don't know whether.
I think in the boss battles, I could have used one more.
Yes, I agree.
Just one more. Like the rest of them were fine, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
It's just in the boss battles when I'm again trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do, not necessarily that it takes forever to do so, but especially on the first time around, it's almost like they basically like we'll let you die the first time.
yeah,
Just go ahead and die the first time, and
yep,
then you can figure it out. And it's I almost the 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 reason I don't like that in games is for the sole reason of it basically loses the tension. Like you're this character and you don't want to die, right?
no,
Like we as a person to person, we don't want to die, right? Because we only get one life, we only get one chance. We know this is a game, you get multiple chances,
yes,
but we still treasure that life and want to make sure we hang on to it for as long as possible because we don't want to die.
no,
So I sometimes I do find games of when they're almost like we just want you to die a bunch of times to figure it out is almost a stupid excuse in my opinion.
yeah. I don't enjoy that too much, and especially when there's so many phases of the boss, like you have to die on each phase to figure it out, and it's like, okay, fine. I'll do this. I'll survive the first phase, and I'll find out what you want me to do on the second phase. Oh, there's a third phase. Oh, there's a fourth phase. Is there? Okay,
Yeah.
let's find
What
out.
am I on? Die number 27? Yeah. Yep. Death number 27. Yeah. Okay.
That's it.
Was it 10 deaths per phase?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Did you have any? Just changing gears slightly. Did you have any performance or technical issues in terms of crashing or anything like that that you'd want to report on?
No
Because
crashes.
PC can be a bit of a. And I go between PC and console, and I notice if I haven't optimized the game, I'll have a few more issues on PC. So I always find that they're a little bit sometimes not as tight as they could be, but I'd be interested.
No crashes. I had some jitter in the frame rate on occasion. I think it was in the beginning when I was just, figuring out the settings that it needs to be at. And I'm so relatively new to PC gaming, I could not tell you what setting I had it on. I kind of
either.
I kind of let the PC tell me what the recommended setting.
That's what
and
I
let,
do.
and let it sit there because like the only time I'll really jitter with the settings is if it's an older game and I'm like, oh yeah, I can really run this bad boy at like 120 frames per second, boost it up to the highest fidelity possible, and I'll be a-okay. But for a game like this, I just set it on recommended, and I know I think there was a couple times I was playing with the settings just to like be like, oh, is this gonna stop from jittering? And the jittering was very minor, and it was mainly when it seemed like the game wasn't done loading yet.
Yeah.
And so it's like hold up, we're not done loading yet. Even though we popped you on the main screen, you can start walking. It's like reminds me of I'm literally playing Jedi Fallen Order. It reminds me of that. Like
Yeah.
right when you get out of one of the elevator loading screens. It's not an elevator, it's a loading screen. Let's be honest. There's so many loading screens in this game that are not loading screens that like as soon as I walked, it all of a sudden pauses.
Yeah,
It's like,
stutters
we're
and
not
goes,
done.
"Sorry."
We're not done loading yet. Sorry. And I'm like, what? Give me a longer elevator ride then.
Yes, absolutely. I actually did have a couple of crashes. Like at one point on the PS5, and it got me worried. It powered down the PS5. Normally, you get that blue screen. It comes up and says, "Do you want to report?"
Are you sure you're just not bad at the game, and they're just like, just stop, just quit now?
I may
just
well have been in the
now.
ice cave at that point, and they were trying to tell me something, but because usually
go to bed and come back later.
Yeah, that does actually work. That worked on Metroid Dread. Funnily enough, I didn't even go to bed. I went to out for lunch and had a few drinks, then come back and did the final boss in like 2 tries, and I was like, I just need to clear my head because I was beating myself. But
no, I powered through that thing, and then I found it hilarious because I beat it before my best friend, and he's a big Nintendo guy, so he was playing it, and then he kept texting me during the boss and going like, "How'd you figure this out?
Yeah.
Would you?" And I was like, "Do you want hints? Do you want me to tell you exactly what to do?" And
Yeah.
he's basically goes like, "How do I get rid of this?" And I was like, "Okay, just use the big bomb."
yeah, that gets rid of most stuff in
Oh.
that game. If you're struggling and you need to get rid of something, that's the one to have. But yeah, on Kino, I had one power down. Like it powered down the PS5, and I was like, oh. And I turned it back on. And it said, "Oh, you've experienced a crash. We're just going to rebuild the database." And I was like, "Oh my god, what has this game done?" Ember Labs, you bastards!
Destroyed your PlayStation.
Yeah,
PlayStation's no longer
the gold dust that is the PS5. And I was like, "Oh my goodness!" But it went back on and was fine. And I did have another crash later on, but this time it was the classic like blue screen. Here's a stupid code. Do you want to attach a screenshot? And I was like, "Just report it. I don't need to attach a screenshot. Like I can't because you've crashed the game."
How soon did you play one at launch? Like when were you playing this?
Yeah, so I pretty much played it in its launch week and probably finished it within 10 days or so. I didn't like power through it. So
yeah, same here.
There may have been one patch actually, and after that patch, I don't think I had any of these issues. So maybe that addressed it. But going back to the ice cave, which we're talking about a lot, I had a weird bug where I went to put my shield on to deflect or parry. I don't know what I was trying to do, one of the two. And Kina got stuck holding the staff like that. And there was no shield around me, but I couldn't be attacked. So Toshi couldn't actually hurt me. He would hit me and he would like react as though I just like parried him, but I couldn't get out of this animation.
Unlimited invisible shield.
I did, but I couldn't hurt him. Like I was stuck like that, and then it would eventually break out of it. But every time I'd use the shield, it would happen. Anyway, it made that encounter easier for whatever reason, and on one of the tries that happened, I got through it, and it carried on into the next phase, like the final boss. And then I was like, right, what's going on here? So I just powered down the game, like closed it, didn't put it in rest mode, restarted it, and it went away. But that was a bit of a strange bug, but I will take it because it kind of helped me when I was getting most frustrated.
You almost wished like it took away some of that guy's health so that you could just put down the controller and be like, I'll just take him out.
I'll let the game beat itself. That's fine for me.
It's your fault.
No, exactly. But that was interesting. But other than that, I mean that. They sound horrendous, those instances, but they were few and far between out of a 12-hour experience, a couple of crashes and that weird bug happening, but not really been many widespread reports of issues of the game, so it's technically pretty solid.
It's pretty technically sound. I mean, and even, I think even with some of like the more complex puzzles, there's one puzzle I couldn't figure out though, and I was like, ooh.
Was it the one where there's candles? And yes, that took me forever.
I had to look that one up.
Yeah, no shame in that. I was close to. That took me.
I tried everything. I was like, I was so confused.
I could see the points on the bow where I had to hit the points. Yes. I was like, what's the bloody order? And then I didn't realise that what was it? I think you had to pump the shield. I can't remember what it's called now, where you do that kind of like.
Yep, and the candles will pop up and then they'll dissipate in the order you need to hit
it.
them at.
Yeah.
But then like so I didn't look up like the full thing at first. I was just gonna read like the beginning and being like, here's a hint, look at the candles. And I was like, okay, I'm looking at the candles. Like what the heck do you want? Like I don't know. At first I thought it was one of those where I would like hit all the areas and then enemies would appear and then it's like a battle phase where you like fight them all and then once you clear them you get your reward. I was like, where's my reward? I don't get my reward. What's going on?
Yeah.
So like that was the one puzzle. Besides that, all the other puzzles were really well done, and I even like some of the creativity. Like even I outsmarted the game to be able to like complete a puzzle, and I thought that was fun because it's like I don't want it to punish me for not doing what it wanted me to do. Like if it gives me the tool set to do this, I should be able to do it, right?
Yeah.
So I think I did it the wrong way. I like went in the opposite order of trying to complete it, but I was like, oh, it worked. Okay.
Yeah. That's always good when games do that. And you brought up.
It was difficult. I'll admit it,
but like it worked.
I had to take the rod and like make the creature thing, and it had to like go for the longest amount of time, almost to the point it ran out of health on the timer. And I was like, I don't think this is the real way to do this, but
I feel like I could do it. Yeah, you can brute force it. No, the puzzle elements of the games, either optional or mandatory, depending on the task at hand. I really enjoyed this breaking up the quite intense combat that we spoke about. I felt like they were, that candle one definitely tested me. I mean, I got there in the end, but generally, I felt like it was a good mixture of like nice like little brain ticklers and stuff that you think, oh, I've got it now, and you feel a little bit clever for solving it, as opposed to just consistently giving you obtuse and vague puzzles. I really liked the balance that they implemented there, even if they kind of went maybe a bit too advanced a couple of times. But generally, I felt like it went really nicely with the overall game and slotted in really well.
Oh, I did run into one bug. Well, technically two, but it was the same bug. Just thought about it now. It's when the rot were carrying items.
Oh yes, this happened to me a handful of times actually.
Yeah, it's not. They would get stuck on geometry that didn't make sense to get stuck on. So like they got stuck on, like I shot down one of those pod thingies from the flower and it fell down, and they were supposed to carry it to this elevator that I have and bring it down and then put it on.
Yep.
And the issue I ran into was there was blades of grass coming out of the wood from the deck that it was on top of, and somehow the rot can't walk through grass, or it did in this moment, it wouldn't let it. And so it was like this tiniest of windows, but the issue was like if I only had like 3 rot creatures, it would have done just fine. It's the fact that I have like 20 rot creatures trying to move this item that they're all getting stuck and can't funnel through the little window that's there. And so it made me think, okay, maybe they're supposed to be able to go through the blade of grass, and like something with the code is saying no, it's a wall of geometry, you can't go through. And I think the other time when the rot were carrying something, it ended up working when I came back. So like I ended up like skipping it, and then I came back to it later, which was it got stuck on the geometry of stairs. Like it wouldn't go up. It wouldn't go up or down the stairs.
Yeah.
Because it was like, oh, we're stuck. And I'm like, oh, okay. And it's like me trying to be like, maybe if I angled the command this way or say come this way, and it just was not working.
Yeah, well,
it wasn't enough to make me go like, I hate this game.
No, that happened to me a handful of times with the rot in particular, when I was asking them to move something. It may well have been, one of them was definitely a side one. We have to put the little statues into the slots, and they wouldn't go and pick it up. And I was like, why are you being disobedient, you little shit? So I wonder whether it was a bit like The Last Guardian, where that fucker doesn't always do what you tell it to do. But no,
it's not very easy commands. He just goes, no,
exactly.
No. And you're like, what the heck does that mean?
Yeah, I can't even understand that. At least with Keenan, I felt like they were quite clear commands.
You had a little arrow to like show exactly what you're doing. Whereas in The Last Guardian, it's almost as if you're like,
just go over there.
Do I really know what I'm asking it to do? Like, do I even know it can do that?
Is this Trico's fault? or not.
Yeah, like to the point, like to the game where it's almost as if like if you don't know what to do, just run around in circles and go na 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 na, and just see what he does.
That will work. But no, I had the same issue with the rot a couple of times. And then funnily enough, again, I mentioned the patch that went in sort of 4 or 5 days afterwards. I didn't experience it after that. Again, don't know whether they managed to stabilize it on the console versions for that particular issue. But yeah, that happened to me a few times. And I think I just reloaded the save the time it happened to me and it cleared it. So it's clearly something, to do with that session that was running. And, once it happened twice, I was like, okay, if this happens again, I'll just reload. I know what the solution is. And it didn't happen again. So I didn't have to worry too much about that. But yeah, the rot are an interesting mechanic because they're not just there to look cute, which they are. They are adorable. They've got the worst name, though, to call them the Rot.
Oh my gosh, right.
It makes sense when you get to the end of the game, because the Rot
Yes.
God, they are derived from that. But immediately when you see these things, the one thing that doesn't spring to mind is you'd call them Rot. Like, I would not call them Rot. To me, Rot is a distasteful, horrible thing. And these things are very, very
In
cute.
the browns.
Yeah.
Well, I guess they're brown. Or
Yeah.
they're black.
They've got little
They're
cute
multicolored.
eyes. They smile. They can wear hats. You got...
Oh, I love how when you walk around in an environment, all of a sudden some of them just appear in the space that they're in and start like interacting with the space around you. And I'm like, oh, that's nice. And then goes back to the question, how is this basic?
Yeah, and sometimes they would direct you towards interactable bits and
Yes.
puzzle bits. They would be there and be like, "Hey, here," and you're like, "What's that?" And you're like, "Oh, crumbs."
You want to like Jedi Fallen Order with the oh geez, I forgot what it's called, the BD2K or whatever. It's
Yes.
the robot, the creature.
Yes,
That is your companion, like shows you the spaces. Like that's clever. Yeah, I love that. Like
Yeah.
it's naturally in the environment telling you what to do without having it be gamey and be like,
pulse this.
oh, look over here. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, no,
'Cause-
it's like, oh, the
Yeah.
creatures know what to do.
The alternative is it tells you direct like that, or you have to go into like, I don't know, Witcher mode and see it highlighted, things like
And
that.
everything.
This is a much more subtle and better contextualized
Natural.
way of doing it, in the world. And you're right to pull back on the Fallen Order bot companion.
Or even
'cause-
God of War, it reminds me of in regards to
Yeah.
the son Atreus is and this is what I love when games do is like make something the player. Like Atreus is us, the player. He's the one learning about the world.
Yeah.
He's the one telling us, "Oh, we can go explore if we want," and make it sound natural as if it's like he's excited to go do that because it's a whole new world for him. But then it tells us to the player, be like, "Thank you telling me I don't have to go to the next story beat, and now I can go explore." But really, just shut up, kid. I want to do my job. But yeah, and the Rot kind of were doing that for you, and that's great. And I think even like some of the mechanics of involving them in combat was unique that you don't see in other games. It's like it's an evolution of saying the basic commands of Pikmin, and like putting them in, evolving them more. And I think that is something that's unique and special that other games don't offer. It's like that. It's not basic.
No, that's not at all. And
That should be the title of this spoiler cast. This is not basic.
This is not basic. Yes, I agree. It's funny because I was playing Horizon Zero Dawn. I replayed that the last few weeks, and I was a big fan of the rope caster in that, where you pin down the machines when you've got a crowd of them. You can either use it to attack them or just to, sorry, I'm not dealing with you for 90 seconds, blah, blah, blah. And it's funny you said that. I remember using the Rot for that very same mechanic in Kena.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Pin 'em down.
when you've got, 5, 6 enemies, some that are strong, some that are kind of lighter, I was like, okay, I need to keep you away from me. So you'd fire the Rot on them and it would pin them down, and you could get off a cheap shot on them, or you could just keep them out of the fight. Again, like it had so many layers, and you didn't have to use all this. But
I was gonna say, even the fun part is when you pin them down, and then if you evolve it enough, you can shoot the arrow, and then it'll take out the other enemies for you. So then it's like, oh, two birds with one stone. Kill get its health down, and then kill these enemies that I was gonna deal with in a minute.
Yep.
And it's more effective. Like it's great.
I definitely love the crossover between the Rot being useful in all the puzzles, well, not all the puzzle solving, but some of the puzzles that are involved in the game, and them having a combat use, because usually it's one or the other. Like it's like, oh, this is a puzzle item. These are items that these Rot, they're only going to help you carry things. But no, these guys were useful in the combat arena as well, which was very useful considering how many tools you had to utilize to get through some of it.
Yeah, I didn't think they were gonna push the rot as far as they did, especially like there was the one level, and I believe it was the one. It was in a cave somewhere. It might have been for the second arc, um, which is when you're on one side of a platform and you can't reach the other side, but your rot can. And then you transform them into the creature, and you have to kill the enemies to cross the path to open, to be able to open a door for you, so you can cross over to that other side. So like
Yeah.
you are completely useless, and you have to completely use the rot to be able to take out the enemies and then also guide themselves across without falling over and all that kind of stuff. And I thought that was clever. I was just like, wow, I didn't think you were going to push it that far. But when you did, it showed how important they are.
Yeah.
And also that, like, oh man, if you make another game, you could do so much more. Now, you can't really because the rot are gone.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean,
Unless you call upon the great rot creature that just appears out of nowhere.
yeah, the rock god.
And it's as your summon.
It was. I thought it was really clever that when you get the what they call the little tiers where you take over and you control basically the little,
Yep.
which looked like a dragon to me at the time. I didn't really understand
Which
what it
then
was.
when you see the final creature, you're like, oh, that
It's
makes
that,
total sense of
yeah,
what it looks like. Yeah.
yeah. That is, it's that being incarnated, at a
Yep.
local level. I was like, that's again, most games don't bother with that level of detail. They just simply don't. And yeah, that was great. What did you make of the kind of optional stuff that you could do in the game? Because there's a few like optional puzzles and activities. There was the boxes that you mentioned earlier where you'd get a little combat challenge. There were you could drop off mail, couldn't you, to certain spirits that are in the village, and it would open up a reward. My general opinion was I enjoyed doing them, but I felt like the rewards didn't always necessarily justify the means. I kept getting that currency that I had no real reason to spend on other than like hats and stuff, which are fun, but there was a lot of that. I'd do something quite difficult and I think, oh, I've just got X reward. I could have done with something else, like more rot, for example. But how did you find the sort of off the beaten path side activities that are optional for the player?
No, I agree with you, and but at the same time, I think because there was not a lot of it, that it didn't make it feel as if it was more tedious than it needed to be.
Yeah.
Like and a lot of the time, like when you found the mailbox thing, it was on your way back.
Yes.
So it was on the way. It's not like I have to go all the way across the other map. Also, they had really convenient waypoint spots to be able to teleport between. So if you did find one that was like way back there, it's like right next to the spot.
Yeah.
So it's not like this tedious thing that I like. If for a completionist you wanted to do everything,
Yeah.
it wasn't going to be a pulling teeth type one. It would be like a casual, like, okay, it's cool to like kind of. It's also nice at the same time to kind of see the environment completely change.
Yeah.
So like by getting rid of all this, you can see how more beautiful the world was, how much more
village,
beautiful
yeah.
this place. It kind of reminded me of the not the Sands of Time, but Prince of Persia. So like the remake, the reincarnation of the Prince of Persia games, where it was with that cell shading,
Yeah.
and where the moments where you took the girl, oh, she's Elika, that's her name. You took Elika and you had her like transform the space. That's what it reminded me of, and I think in the same way that like when you would go through the world and you'd be like, oh, I transformed it and it's beautiful again. Like as I ran by the spaces, I'd be like, oh, that's a really nice house. Like it's all really nice again. Like it almost fed into the story in a sense where it's not as much of the reward of the the money, the currency. It's
Sure.
more the reward of being like, I'm healing this area, I'm
Yeah.
healing this environment, I'm healing these people, and it kind of just fed into that narrative. And because it wasn't a lot of it, I didn't feel like it was tedious to the point where I would have been like, oh, I don't need to do this. I didn't feel like I had to do all of it,
No.
but I did a lot of it.
Same here, yeah. I did a fair wedge of it as well, and because most of the time, like you said, it was conveniently placed that you'd just wander by and think, oh, what's that? And then you go down there and there'd be something there for you to do. It wasn't tucked away. Although I'm sure if you went for the full completionist run, there's some stuff that's tucked away. One of the advantages of playing on PC is you haven't got to worry about chasing the platinum. I don't know if you are interested in that anyway, but I know some people are like,
if it's an easy platinum, I'll go for it.
Yeah, well, this one, you've got to beat the game on master difficulty, and I was like, what? That's 2 levels above normal.
I did not want to try it at the harder difficulty. I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that.
Yeah, I'm full on this difficulty. I'm
good. Especially that one ice cave. I wonder how hard that. Actually, I might want to do it just to like maybe Twitch stream on Pixel Pints of like me trying to take on the ice cave at master level.
Yes,
and maybe I'll have you with me as my companion. But I think. And I think the one where I found like super rewarding was I found one space where it like opened up, and usually it's just like a little house, like it'll open up.
Yeah.
This one, it was like almost like had a courtyard, and I was like, oh, this is like so much bigger, and it's like so I can't remember if I got something extra special out of that one, but it was one that stood out to me because it was different in regards to like the location.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other positives that you don't feel like we've touched upon? I mean, it's obviously difficult to encapsulate everything in a chat, but anything that you've thought about since playing it and thought, yeah, I really think that's something to hang our hat on and say it's worth calling out.
I just hang on the hat on the game overall.
Yeah.
I mean, for their first shot at it, it's good. It's really good. It's
that's incredible, really. Like when you look at it as a debut title, because really, like when I first saw it at the whatever it was, the PlayStation 5 Future of Games last year,
showcased,
whatever it was, I thought that looks really interesting. I didn't know anything about the developers at the time, and I'd done some research, and I was like, okay, my expectations are, I think, justifiably lowered because this is their first game. We've seen this time and time again where promising trailers pop out and they don't quite deliver. So I was a bit like, look, we'll see what happens when it comes out, blah, blah, blah. Pops out this autumn. And I'm so glad I jumped on it and went for it because it really did surprise me in so many ways that I wasn't expecting. And Ember Labs, for their first game, it's incredible, really, when you think about they've never done a video game before. To be this competent at it at a first go is quite telling, I think.
Oh yeah, it reminded me in the same way of the first Uncharted game, or like Days Gone, where it's like your first project. It's not perfect. It's got really good bones. It's got really good structure. Where it's like where you looked at like the first Uncharted game. It's like got a good story.
Yeah.
It's combat is pretty much the framework is good right there. The climbing
serviceable,
the platforming is it's pretty good. It's not all the way there, but it's pretty good. And that's where I kind of feel like with Kena, and I think even like some of the elements where I had like some of the most fun, I'm like, oh, I really wish they evolved this more, which is really where I had the most fun was when I was shooting the arrow and it was flying me in the air.
Yes.
And that somehow the feel that like the way that the visuals on the screen, the speed you were going at, it felt so good when I was hopping between them, especially when you're like slows down the speed when you bring up your bow for the second shot, and it's like it really just felt so good. I was like, oh, I wish they built on that more. Like that's one element of like in the next game, build on that. I really want to see more of that. And so I think they got the great bones there for me, and I was like, yeah, and now seeing Game Awards and seeing them nominated for what they're nominated for is like, yeah, would I not nominate for Game of the Year? Probably not. But would I nominate for Best Indie Game and Best Debut Title? Absolutely. It's probably my winner in that book, my personal winner. So like it's done a good job for what they're working with. Like I'm truly impressed, and like. And for the price you pay for the title too, it is one that it's a must buy.
Yeah,
it's just a must buy.
That's a good point. Actually, is that it is a I wouldn't say budget title. I mean, it was £32 over here. I don't know what it was over your side. $40, $35,
$40, $40.
Yeah, and normally it's $60, so it's like a 20 off that. But I think that's really appropriately priced. And considering a lot of the stuff, I know this is not a a first party developed game by Sony, but a game like Returnal that came out and they charged $70 and £70 over here, I was like, I'm gonna wait for that to be a bit cheaper and whatnot. Whereas this was like, this felt like not a no-brainer, but I was like, 30 odd pounds. I was like, sure, what's the worst that can happen with that? And it kind of over delivered on the price front in terms of fun and whatnot, and how much I enjoyed the game. It was far in excess of the £30 I paid. Now, if I paid a bit more, would I have been perhaps as high on it? I think I still would have been high on the points we've pointed out. But you'd always have that question probably could have been doing with a bit cheaper, but they priced it, I think, spot on, like perfect.
Yeah, the value proposition wouldn't be as high as it is right now.
No.
With the price you're paying.
No. Any negatives or drawbacks that you noticed or haven't covered?
I got a personal nitpick. I can't stand the double jump.
Right, that's interesting you say that. So what I noticed with the double jump is, A, yes, it's not the best, but B, I noticed that if I was jumping off a reasonable height, which would incur fall damage, there is some fall damage. It's not egregious like some games. Like Horizon, the other day I jumped off something and died, and I was like, I've just lost 10 minutes because it's the save points in that.
It's a trip. It's a trip, man. It's a trip.
I was like, I wasn't prepared for that, but anyway, different conversation. And what I thought I could do was I could use the double jump at the end of the fall to reduce the fall damage. And no, Kenna was like, boom, landed like I jumped off the top of the Empire State Building. And I was a bit like, okay, so they haven't quite figured out that's happening, that I've changed my velocity, and actually she should only react to a small jump. But yeah, carry on with the other criticism for the double jump.
There's that, and I laugh at that every single time that happens because like I did figure that out and was doing the same thing. But my nitpick is like when you do a double jump, what it lacked two elements that and I don't know why. For me, I obsess over jumping. Like if I tell you the perfect double jump backflip is Luigi from Super Smash Brothers Melee. It's got the perfect weight. Yeah. It's got the perfect momentum. He does a slow backflip, and then when he does the double jump, he like flicks his feet. So then he gets that momentum and that spin, and then it gives it the magic hop that you're looking for, right? But it still feels natural because of the momentum, the weight, the speed. And I think even Jedi Fallen Order has it's a little closer with the double jump. Personally, I like front flips. So like I wish she did a front flip, but it's because it's so stagnant with its second jump.
Yeah.
And I can see why it is stagnant, because it's like a magic spell where it just like magically jumps the extra
spins
momentum.
Round, doesn't she? The animation just goes whoop.
Yeah, but in my mind, I'm like, maybe it's because like the staff is giving her a magic ability to kind of like shoot up, but it only lets you kind of like shoot up. It doesn't let you shoot forward. And I think that's what it's lacking is that forward momentum. It's more of upwards momentum than forwards. Yeah,
no, it definitely felt a bit stiff, and sort of playing into that, I guess my nitpick was around like the movement in general. It did feel just a slight bit too stiff, and one of the first things I noticed when I first turned it on was I don't know what it is. I like to walk in games. Like I like to have the character walk around, and you tilt the analog sticks forward very slightly, and it has that recognition that
two-tier.
That's it. You tilt it a bit more, they get a bit faster. You tilt a bit more, and it feels like a change of pace that I'm controlling. Whereas on here, it was like once I got over halfway through pushing it, she would start jogging, and I was like, oh, hang on, I can't slowly make her sort of walk at the pace I want to, and it would just chop off and make her jog. So at that point,
interesting. Maybe that's why I'm if people don't know of your Idle Game Chat crew, I'm known for getting through games very quickly. Not necessarily being able to like I get through everything that you should be able to get through. I just get through it in a shorter amount of time, and I still see as much, if not more, than most average people. Like
I'm
an
the
example,
opposite. I'm so slow.
Like
the replay of Horizon I did, I think it's 70 hours. Like that's excessive, isn't it?
Absolutely. Like I think I got through The Last of Us Part 2 in like what, I think I did it in 17 hours, and I think the
I was
average is like 25
I
to
was
30, and I'm like,
25. Yeah, I was
yeah, and
25.
here, and it's because I don't walk. Like I like, unless unless I really want to walk, most of
Yeah,
the time I'm just like, let me run. I'm
yeah.
running. And so like I almost thought there was no, I thought there was no run button. So I saw at first, but then I realized there was one, and I think it was because the beginning of the game doesn't give it to you until
Mm,
you hit credits when you get to the village.
that's it. Yeah.
Then they give you the run button. At first I thought there was no run, and I was like, oh, this is so frustrating. It's taking me forever to run between these two locations. I'm really so yeah, no, and I can understand that as a person that likes to walk.
Yes.
I could see that being an issue for you a
Yeah, and
little
again,
bit.
it's a massive nitpick, but it was so strange. It was one of the first things I noticed, and I was like, "Oh, I can't do my little walking thing I like to do and just sort of stroll around." And yet they have that awkward animation usually where they look like they've had a crap in their pants and they're,
Hmm.
they're half jogging and walking. And I was like, it doesn't have that. It just goes from pretty much a walk to a jog. But
I
again,
think overall, just the movement's not as great as it
no,
could be.
yeah,
Because like another example would be, and I agree with you, and I would say also that if you're not in lock on, the combat it isn't as good.
yeah,
Like even like so an example like Final Fantasy VII Remake.
hmm
The combat actually is better when you change it, and you change it to be able to, instead of it, one, either having the lock on, or two, not being able to switch enemies between different enemies that where it naturally locks onto the enemy. Um, Having that free flow actually hinders the combat. So you actually have to go into the settings and change it. So if anybody's having issues with the combat of Final Fantasy VII Remake, I implore you to go into the settings and change, to be able to do more free flow with your combat, and I think you'll
okay,
enjoy it that much more. I think Kino was lacking that, um, especially because they had so many enemies and it's focused so hard on the lock on that I think if it had a self lock on mechanic where if you're not in like a pure lock on for one specific enemy, or if you choose to lock on and then you switch between enemies, it's a little more free flowing. Besides, I can't hit this enemy, I can't move on to this one as quickly because like I'm hitting this one and one's coming next to me. I just want to be able to give it one bash so it doesn't do its does its attack mechanic, and then I can go back to like finishing off this one.
yeah. I definitely missed a few of my rot moves where I wasn't locked on, and I just whiffed past them, and I
Yes.
was like,
Oh,
and that was a
oh, that
waste because you have to.
breaks your heart.
Yeah, you have to build that up as well. It's like a mechanic in battle that you build up. I think it's a confidence meter or something like that. I can't remember
Yeah, they
exactly how
call
they just.
yeah, they're little chickens, and they're basically like,
Yeah,
if you beat it up enough, we'll help
it will
you.
help you out. Yeah, if you don't, then you can't use them. So I definitely whiffed a few of those. But I think in general though, they are small issues and overall a great package. I mean, what would you? I mean, you don't have to do this if you. Some people don't like to, but if you had to give the game a score, we usually operate on. You get a zero point 0.5 modifier, so if you want to do an 8, you could do an 8.5 or a 9. Blah blah blah. Where would you kind of fall? Having it's interesting because actually we both played this quite a while back and finished it probably 3-4 weeks ago, so we've had time to digest it, which is why we're sometimes rusty on the detail. But I actually like speaking to people after that time because it's like, how much do we really remember about this and what's sticking out in our minds? But how are you kind of feeling on that front in terms of potentially scoring
Now,
it?
what kind of scale we're talking? Are we talking about the hypocritical gaming score of it's actually 7 out of 10 and not necessarily a 1 out of 10?
I tend to use the whole thing. I just say that if it's a 7, it's still worth playing at some point. Like it's that's not average. That's still it's doing something worthwhile doing. It might have some problems potentially, but I go as low as 4, 3. Like if stuff doesn't
If we're
work, then you're going down that road.
I guess I'll answer it both ways. So if I'm doing like a legit 1 to 10 scale where one is apps, so like I could give some games in this industry that I've seen like threes,
Right?
like
Yeah.
legit threes, and people would be like, "Oh, that's a 6."
Yeah.
Like,
Okay. Yeah.
if we're doing that scale, I would probably give this at like a 6.5. But if we're going by like what we are used to, the 7 to 10 scale, basically with like some nuances in the fives and sixes, I probably would get this an 8,
Yeah.
may I'm it's like in between the 8 and the 8.5. It's like really just how much you personal preference. I don't think I can. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I'm gonna give it an 8. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard because it's like I really do love the animation, and maybe I want to give it that extra point 0.5 for, because I mean, even though it's CG cutscenes, that's really well done
Oh, yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
Like
yeah, it's
that's
great.
some stuff you don't see from a lot of studios in this industry. Like
No.
that is very, very unique. But I think I'm just gonna go with an 8 because I think that the combat is not as complex as some other games, but like for what you're going for and what how much long you're playing it for,
Yeah.
it's got it all, and
Yeah.
it's got it all and does it well.
Yeah. No, I tend to agree with that. What's next for Ember Lab? Like, if you're your favourite CEO Jimbo Ryan, are you having a look at these guys and thinking, we should lock those guys down? Like, first game, they've done this. We don't have I love Sony's games, but we don't have much that's kind of looks like this. We're all very gritty, big, powerful third person story driven games, and that kind of falls into this category, but it looks different for sure.
No, they got Ratchet and Clank,
Yeah,
which is a
Ratchet.
similar type style. They also got like Marvel Spider-Man, which is not that dark. Let's
Well,
be honest.
we'll see. Got
Well,
Venom.
yeah, well, Venom and Kraven the Hunter.
Yeah.
That'll be, and then we got Wolverine, which will be.
I hope they go
Well,
dark on that.
I hope they go dark on the Wolverine too. I have a feeling they will. I have a feeling Wolverine will be that for them, but
Yeah,
they'll
I hope
probably
so.
stick with the more kid-friendly Spider-Man.
Yes, of
Or
course.
teeny Spider-Man, like just bordering the M rating.
He never kills anyone other than when I web sling them into the sea, and I think, well, he's not surviving that, is he? That guy's drowning when I chuck him into the sea.
Nah, it's okay.
He's okay.
And
Do you think the web floats him? Is that what you're saying? It keeps him
yeah,
above water.
exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's a floating mechanic. Or it's either that or it dissolves in the water instantly.
Okay.
So then
But what if
they're
I've knocked,
free
I've
to be
knocked
able
them
to
out.
swim.
I've knocked them out. They that's it.
But water wakes them up, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you throw some
Agreed.
water on a knocked out person, and you're like, "Oh my god, I'm awake."
It's funny. The only reason I said that is because I saw a clip the other day. It was on Twitter, and someone said Spider-Man doesn't kill people, right? And it's from the game. And they got that crime where the car tips over, and you have to get someone out before it blows up. And what they did is they webbed someone to the car, and then got the civilian out, and then it exploded with them attached to the to the car. And I was like, okay, surely that guy's dead unless the web is fireproof. We don't know. Maybe,
It's total accident.
Yeah.
Total accident. He doesn't intentionally kill people.
no, exactly.
It's just like Batman. He doesn't intentionally kill them. He just wants to knock them out. He just might kick them a little too hard in the face.
That's it.
Well, if we're talking on a business standpoint, if I was Jim Ryan, it depends. Like, it depends on their next project. This
Yeah.
doesn't, who knows? They might not want to do another game for a while. Like, because
right.
they're this is not what they're known for. They're
No.
known for making animated films, which is clearly they're good at it,
Yeah.
because like if you see these cutscenes, you'd be like, I would watch that Pixar movie
Oh yeah.
any day. So I don't know. It's I think it's all dependent on what they want to do next. And they may not want to be purchased by Sony because maybe they want to do film stuff. And
Yeah.
so like because they would be owned by PlayStation, they might not be able to do film things, or it is a smart decision for them because PlayStation is moving into trying to very much so move their properties into the TV and movie space, that it would be nice for them to have them on hand to make two teams, a gaming team and an animation team. And the animation team could work on Sony properties. Heck, you could probably continue the Kina story
Yeah.
in an animated film or TV show, and I think people would watch it. I think she's a compelling character. I think they're also nervous maybe if Sony sucks them up, that Sony would really try to compel them to make a sequel, and maybe they don't want to make one.
Well, funny
Maybe they want
enough,
to try a whole new thing.
I did read that they said it's unlikely that they would
Yeah, I
want
thought
to
I
make,
read that
make a
too.
game sequel, but they didn't. They left the sort of door open to say we could explore it in other mediums. So maybe a keener fit, like you were saying there. So yeah, it's a bit of an odd one because they're not an outright game studio, like you said. They've had work in the animation.
It's not like
stuff.
Housemarque. This is their third game with Sony.
Oh yeah, and I think that's more likely. If they did 2-3 more games and Sony were clearly in partnership with them, then maybe we'd see that purchase. Same with Blue Point, Insomniac, etc. That's kind of how Sony seem to
Yeah, I
operate.
see the partnership continuing.
Yeah.
Unless they're like, unless the next project sounds very, very bad and they're just deciding like we do not want to be affiliated with it. Um, I mean, you never know. Like, there's been studios that made some good stuff, and then their second project, I'm like, maybe you should make that, and then they're like, we'll still make it, and then it does bad. So, um, the what's the word? The success can feed into the drama within a person and be able to be like, oh man, I know better than all y'all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's all just dependent on the team. I think I really would like to see another project from them.
Yeah.
I just don't know what it would be. And I think one thing that they're known for is great stories, and as long as that's their focal point, I think they have something going for themselves. And now they have a game under their belt, and maybe because of so I am been actively searching for a career in the games industry, not just doing the work I've done, whether that's doing producing like I've done already, or that's working in the industry itself and production side. So I've been keeping an eye on Ember Labs and seeing like, are they hiring? Like what's their thing? And they're really not hiring at the moment. So like, I'm curious if they're just going to stick with this small group and figure out what they're going to do next. Like, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And but I guess the kind of takeaway is the next time Ember Labs announce, doesn't even have to be gaming. If they do another film or I'm going to be looking to watch it or interact. If it's a game, I'm going to have eyes on it. They've done themselves.
Let's just say I'm keeping my eyes on this studio regardless of what they're doing.
Exactly, yeah. And I think that speaks volumes really for what they've done with their first gaming project, because I never would have heard of these guys had they not dived into the gaming space. So it's they're now, I will be keeping an eye on them and checking up for them, and I'm sure the media will as well. It'll be like, oh, Ember Labs are doing a TV show. They made Kena, and it will just that'll start to help them. So. But
yeah, and a lot of the times, like in this specific industry, and I only know I know a lot of info about different industries, especially in movies, television shows, and games, is because I have a lot of connections here in LA. Since I've moved out here, like my roommates, one of them works for a CG studio that they put CG on your television shows and on your movies and stuff like that. And I have one that is in school for animation and has connections with one of their teachers is now head of Marvel Animation now ever to help fix the disaster is the What If series. That's why they're doing the sequel, because they brought in a new director to fix that in regards to head of all animation at Marvel. So like I have some connections out here, and for that instance, it's a lot of the times these types of studios like Ember Labs, you don't know what they're doing because just like we never probably have heard of their projects because they're hidden in the crawl of the credits that you don't see.
Sure.
It's not until a game like this to get them exposed and to create that exposure, because to be honest, they probably have done animation for a lot of things that you didn't know. Like just like my roommate right now is doing a lot of special effects for a lot of stuff that we can't talk about.
Yeah.
but you probably will or have seen, and it's interesting.
Yeah, agreed. Final question: if you would you rather have a soft play toy of a Pikmin or a Rot? Put it on your bedside. You come,
Well, it's a Rot. Rot. Pikmin don't got the googly eyes, man.
They don't.
It's the googly eyes.
The
eyes. It's the eyes. The eyes is the eyes is the passage to the soul, or whatever the saying is. But like these things, I think that's what makes the Rot so compelling is that facial animation. It's the eyes, and that's what does it.
Yeah, I agree. It's the Rot all day long.
As long as I can customize my color, I don't want the brown version.
No, yeah, they should, and select the hat as well. I think that's
yeah. Oh, that would be fun to like attachable hats by Velcro. You can just like Velcro a hat on.
That'd be good. That's for sure. I actually, considering how long it takes me to play through games, this is the reason why. I don't know if you ever bothered to sit down and interact with the rot. Like you could kiss them or like talk to them and stuff like that. I
Yep.
spent about half an hour doing that at one point. I was just going through all the different interactable things you could do.
It could be super insensitive, but I think at the same time, I think it would be super compelling is if like the hats you give them, they would like do the personality of that hat. So like if you gave like the Rot the cowboy hat,
Yeah.
it'd like come up, walk up, and then do like a gun draw like
Yeah.
for fun. Or like if you give one like a mariachi hat, they're like doing like that would be so fun to like
That would be. You
and
could like imprint their personality slightly.
maybe that's what their plan was and they just ran out of time. I feel like I guess contrivance of the game we didn't talk about was the hats. Like the hats felt useless.
Yeah.
I think there was there must have been something more to the hats and they just could not get it done in time.
Yeah.
Because I do all that work for all those hats. I feel as if that was a waste. That was a waste of their time if there wasn't something more to it. Like maybe it gives them all like power ups. I don't know, or like the Rot maybe had a skill tree of its own where like it would boost its abilities based off how many hats each of the Rot are wearing. Like I think there maybe was something more built into it and just wasn't able to happen. So like we have all these hats, let's just put them in the game at least.
Yeah.
But that's just my thought. I don't know if you had a thought of like the hat really did mean something more, or this was the true intention of the hats.
Not really. I mean, I see where you're going with that. That may well have been happening. I can totally see where if you were being really deliberate about it, you wouldn't have 1,000 hats. You'd probably have half a dozen, 2 dozen, maybe tops, and they would have some sort of boon that you would attach to the Rot and whatnot. But I felt like the Rot themselves would need to be a little bit more advanced in terms of what you can do with them for that to come to fruition. But the hats were for
like in my mind, it's like a confidence increase booster.
Yeah, maybe
like,
they get
if an X percentage of your Rot are wearing hats, you get a like 10% boost on your confidence meter per hit or something.
Yeah. That's something they could have explored for sure. But I like to just I like every Rot to have an individual hat, so I'd only put a hat on them.
Yes, I did not want them to have the same hat. No, each of them needs their own personality.
Exactly.
No one is the same, except maybe you could put 2 hats on one and call them twins.
Yeah.
And be like, those are brothers. Those are brothers.
They're the brother Rots. Excellent. Well, look, it's been great to talk to you about Kena Bridges Spirits. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with it, and I've thoroughly enjoyed my time speaking to you, Mitch. It's always good to catch up. Where can people find you, or some of your activities that they might find in the public space, be it Pixel Pints or even other endeavours that we're not aware of?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at Mitch Sikor, so MITCHSIKOR. You can find all of the links to all the stuff that current projects I work on. So I work on Pixel Pints. We're the only global gaming podcast that provides 2 great things, which is good beer and video games. So you can check us out every single weekend. We stream our episodes live on Twitch. If you follow the Pixel Pints Twitter handle, which is on my Twitter handle as well. So just go there and you'll find all the stuff. But we do it every single weekend. All our stuff is archived on YouTube, podcasting services, and we do some fun stuff. We play some games, not video games. We play like games about games. So actually, next week is
the metaverse.
Really, yes, we're a game within a game within a game, right? Actually, next week is really fun. It's our Game of the Game Awards, which is basically a game we play of predicting the Game Awards, and then this one may have won every single year, 2 years in a row, baby.
Yes.
Champion.
Double champ here on the show.
Yeah, maybe that's why I'm the favorite. I'm the champion.
We do like winners.
But that's true. Hey, but yeah, we're doing that next week, so that's gonna be a lot of fun. So if there's one episode to check out, and that's the one. We do crazy times though, because we have some people from your side of the pond in the UK. We got someone from Japan.
Yep.
We have someone from Las Vegas. I'm here in LA. And we do have one person who is in the East Coast that comes on occasion. So we hit the weirdest time zones. So if you just follow us on the Twitter, you'll know, and it's all archived. So yeah, that's a lot of fun. I'm doing that, but I'm also just trying to find the next path, like I've said before, and so hopefully. I get to help shape the future, or if not, shape the coverage of video games in the future. That it's going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And look, we wish you the best of luck on that endeavour and pulling for you. So don't get too big league for us though. If you do make it, you know, we want you back at some point. So don't
Oh, I don't think I'll go
disappear.
away. I just might have some NDAs that I just can't speak about.
We'll have to get a little zip, you know.
Yeah,
animation to
they'll
put
be
over you.
like, tell us about the next Obsidian game. I'd be like, and then maybe I'll have to like close my screen because they'll be like, blink twice if this is what's happening. And I was like, God damn it, I can't blink.
Excellent. Well, look, thanks, Mitch. I do truly appreciate your time. It's been a lot of fun catching up with you and speaking about Kino. I know we tried to do it a few times and it took a little bit of a long time, but you know, all good things come to those who wait. So I truly do appreciate your time. Thank you for joining on this.
I enjoy idle game chat, so this is fun for me. I've never been a guest on your show, so you've been a guest on ours. So it's only fun.
The first person, so that means something. You know, you'll always have that accolade.
I'm the favorite. I'm just
Exactly.
always going to be titled favorite.
Absolutely. Guys, those of you that are listening or watching, you know where to find us. You know, Dimp Digital on all the socials, the YouTube, or if you just want the podcast, it's Idle Game Chat. Patreon is under Dimp Digital, as is the Twitch channel, but I will not bore you anymore. I'll let you guys get on with your week. Have a great week, everyone. Mitch, thank you once again. Nothing more for us to say here, though, other than thanks for your time and ta-da.
This was a Dimp Digital production.